is crafted for dreamers, doers, or anyone who has been told they can't. Get ready as we challenge those narratives together. You're tuning in live to the United Public Radio Network, airing on 105.3 and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. We are streaming on all the popular platforms every Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Join me for a candid and thought-provoking conversation celebrating your unique journey because you are worth it. Oh my goodness, multitasking over here like no tomorrow for this lovely Monday. Welcome everyone. Happy Monday. Welcome to Breaking Norms, Building Dreams. I'm your host, Brittany Ashley, and we are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network on 105.3 and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. Get ready to escape the next hour as we break norms and build dreams with Sonja. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Hi, Brittany. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really grateful to be here.
I'm so excited. I know we've kind of chatted about this for months. I feel like I mentioned to you, I was sick or something happened or all the things in between. So a lot of people are like, where's Brittany sometimes? But 2026 has taken me out a little bit.
I can seriously relate. Mom life has been momming lately. So I'm grateful to be here now. And we always seem to get it done, don't we?
We do. Well, I'm so excited to have you. I will do a little bit of who you are, but then we'll dig into, I'll pass it on the torch to you. So Sonja is a clinical speaker and educator specializing in addiction and family systems, a Canadian certified counselor with a master's degree in counseling psychology and over 15 years of clinical experience. She has worked across the continuum of care in several of the Canada's leading treatment facilities. Sonja is known for transforming complex concepts about addiction into practical strategies that empowers families and clinics alike. Her work is also informed by personal lived experiences growing up in a home impacted by addiction, which continues to shape her compassion and transformational approach. I'm so excited. I know you and I kind of talked a little bit about my own experience, but we'll leave that for later in the show. Explain more about your background and how you got started.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, I am a Canadian certified counselor, and I specialize in addiction and family systems. I practice here on beautiful Vancouver Island, but I do provide services all across Canada. So everything that I do currently is virtual. Which wasn't always the case, but COVID actually really changed things for families in some ways that were positive and some ways that were not so positive. But one is that we are much more open to virtual counseling now, so that's been amazing. I focus a lot on providing programs and services just for families. As you mentioned, I am a family member. I lost a parent to addiction when I was very young. And so that is really what got my journey started. I also focus on advocacy. So without getting too far into things, we know that the impact of addiction on families is huge, and they're often expected to manage this experience with less supports and far fewer resources. So even when services are available for families, the standard of care often falls really short of what's actually needed. And so I've spent the last 5 years or so working in the nonprofit sector to try to address these gaps and really just improve outcomes for families across the board.
Amazing. Well, I love meeting individuals who kind of started off with seeing a gap in the system or coming from passion. It's like a great combination of both. So I'm so excited to kind of dig deeper and get the audience to get to know more about what you do and who you are. And I know you have a book coming, which we'll dig in a little bit deeper too. So I know you have a lot of different credentials in the name that are, I know, super important for people to know. That's why I didn't announce them right away. But you have an MA, a BSW, and a CC. Do you want to maybe highlight what each abbreviation means? So, because I know they're very important.
Yeah, honestly, I find them to be the least important part of who I am. But I
Yeah.
do have a master's degree in counseling psychology. I have a bachelor of social work, and then I'm a certified clinician in Canada. So that those are important, just because there is, a lot of different regulations across Canada when it comes to counseling. So it is really important that we're looking for people with full credentials, especially when we're dealing with addiction and families. We're dealing with trauma. We're dealing with, really complex systems. So I think that's one of the biggest things that's lacking for families is just that a lot of times the services that are available for them are not people who are even fully certified. And dealing with family systems and complex trauma, it
Mhm.
really requires a certain level of care that's not
Yeah.
always there.
Yes. There's a lot of layers to it, for sure. Like, I'm not, well, diverse in it, but just from hearing or seeing or anything like that in the betweens, right? I've definitely, I know, like, knowing, having the credentials are very important for some people to kind of consider too when they're looking for that help. Maybe we can dig back into like your story, if that's okay with you, on how
Yeah.
you really, yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. So, when I talk about my story, I really am still heartbroken for that little girl.
Mhm.
At the age of 12, you really can't understand that addiction just doesn't negotiate with love. And you can't understand that addiction is not a choice. Most adults that I work with don't fully understand that addiction isn't a choice. Even sometimes we can understand it, and it's really hard to come back to the idea that this is actually a medical condition for people, because
Mhm.
the behaviors just don't make sense to us as
Yeah.
families. And so, at 12 years old, I gave my dad an ultimatum. It's me or the heroin.
Mhm.
And I think that at that age when that person, your hero, your everything, your protector, when they actually choose the heroin,
Mhm.
that that leaves an impact, right? That leaves an impact that I still carry that a lot of that with me today.
Thank you for sharing. And even just to be brave to have that conversation with your dad at that age.
Yeah, like I knew he was gone. And
Mhm.
that's when I lost him. I
Yeah.
he did, ultimately pass away, in my early 20s, but I lost my dad when I was 12, when I had to have that conversation, and when I looked at him and he was no longer safe, that is the moment that I lost my person,
Mhm.
um, and I was very guarded. I was very boundaried. I learned now that I wasn't boundaried. Those weren't boundaries, but I
Mhm.
was just very closed off. I was so devastated. I
Mhm.
was heartbroken. I was, uh, yeah, I couldn't, I was in so much pain and I just had to protect myself,
Mhm.
at that time. And so I took steps way back, from the whole thing. And I went really internal and I went to a place that, ultimately was super lonely,
Mhm.
but I didn't realize that that's a natural response to trauma, and that I actually did all of the things. My body just naturally knew what to do.
Mhm.
Um, and unfortunately, those behaviors that develop to really protect us in times when we need it to, those behaviors often don't translate super well into,
Mhm.
the rest of our relationships and as we grow in our lives. Um, And I guess one of the biggest parts about that was that I believed that that was who I was, and
Mhm.
not understanding that that was how I actually learned to adapt. And I can see my resilience today as a clinician and someone who's done a ton of personal work. I can see that today, like, wow, that little girl just knew what to do. She knew how to protect herself in that
Mhm.
moment. But at the time, I didn't see any of that. I didn't understand any of that. I just thought I was super angry. I was suspicious, distrusting of people. I learned that, you're the people who are supposed to protect you are actually the most likely to hurt you.
Mhm.
And so I had to protect myself. And I didn't know that was just adaptive behavior. I thought it was actually who I was. And that shift is really important because adaptive behaviors can be healed and changed,
Mhm.
as opposed to that actually being me. So you
Yes.
have, part of my healing was coming back to myself, finding myself, and especially at such a young age where you haven't even really met yourself yet.
No. You're just starting to really learn about yourself around that age. 12, 13 is, like, the prime of, like, yeah. So how did you learn, like, looking back now with the boundaries, like, anyone who's listening to us today, any kind of experience, like, reflecting back on your experiences, any boundaries, because you did put that boundary in place, but is there anything that you wished maybe a little bit more of the boundaries you would have set forward, not just with the dad, but maybe your, like, maybe other people in the air and are surrounding around you?
Yeah, so boundaries are a really hot topic for
Mm.
families. They wanna know, they come to me and they're like, "My boundaries aren't working," and I'm like, "That's impossible. You're in control of your boundaries." But what they're really saying, right, is like, "I'm trying to control this person and they're not doing what I'm wanting them to do." So
Mhm.
that's a really important distinction in boundaries, like, who is expected to do the changing when it comes to boundaries. Um, for me, mine weren't boundaries, they were just walls. I had up really big walls, and boundaries are actually way more fluid than people expect. They can be too fluid and they can be too strong. So there's this balance in between where we're actually working with somebody, because boundaries are about intimacy. Boundaries are about connection. Boundaries are about, I'm going to let you know, sort of who I am and what my needs are and what my feelings are. And then, so that we can respect one another and be in relationship together to really know each other. So boundaries are a very intimate interaction. And I want to say, when people are in active addiction, we can't really have those kinds of conversations, right? They're not available for that kind of conversation. And so oftentimes, things like ultimatums or what have you is which is what I gave my dad at the age of 12, right? That's not a boundary, it's an ultimatum. This
Yeah.
is it, right? And sometimes in addiction that is necessary. The problem is with the follow through.
Mhm.
we're not always great with the follow through. So then those are just, ultimately threats or empty threats even at that. But yeah, boundaries are really about a dance between two people and about intimacy, getting to know one another and respect. But when it comes to addiction, we are letting people know how we are going to be different. That's a true boundary, right? I love you. I see you. This is okay. This is not okay. And I'm going to be doing X, Y, and Z to protect my own mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, financial capacity. And then it is really our responsibility to follow through. So if our boundaries aren't working,
Mhm.
we're the only ones that are actually in control. It isn't somebody else who gets to decide, here's what I need, here's what I'm feeling, and here's how I'm going to make sure that I'm taking care of me. And we're
Yes.
really letting somebody know that.
Mhm. That's powerful. And I think I like how you distinguish that as well, boundaries and then kind of like no, like the full, like, ultimatum. Um, looking for anyone listening who might be struggling right now for setting boundaries, do you have any kind of, because you already just mentioned a few, but anything that really sticks out that can really help maybe, because we do slip, for me, like, I'm a people pleaser, or like with a loved one or anything like that, it's like, oh, well, this is my boundary. But then slowly, like, it can creep in of like, oh my goodness, the boundaries are completely out the wall. What do I do now?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. So for anybody listening, I think the most important thing is that we have to stop expecting ourselves to do this alone or to know how to handle this.
Mhm.
And it's not even knowing how to handle it. Sometimes we know how to handle it, and our bodies are in a trauma response. Our bodies are in a threat response. So
Mhm.
loving someone with an addiction is a traumatic process.
Mhm.
And like I remember the first time I heard that, I was really thrown. I was like, "What?" Like, it was 20 years ago. Trauma wasn't quite as openly talked about as it is now. But I think that reaction is still really important. Like, I grew up in a very traumatic environment. I saw, witnessed things that were horribly scary and definitely qualified as trauma. But even to hear someone tell me that I had been traumatized, I was like, what?
Mhm.
So I think that's a pretty common response, and people maybe don't fully understand that active addiction, witnessing someone we love with a life-threatening illness is traumatic, and it's not just momentary trauma. This is chronic trauma that goes on for months, years, like decades for
Mhm.
people, and often also not someone's first traumatic experience.
Yeah.
So, y our bodies respond to trauma in a certain way. Our
Mhm.
nervous system, what's happening in our brain, our neural pathways, the ways that we are responding or reacting is based in physiological change. We
Mhm.
are we are doing things, our nervous systems are in a threat response, fight, flight,
Right?
freeze, and
Cron
we are behaving in these ways not because it's conscious or
Mhm.
rational. It's because it's physiological. Our bodies are doing exactly what they were meant to do.
Mhm.
And so we're expecting ourselves to, set these boundaries. Well, boundaries are horribly threatening at first, especially for people who are people pleasers. So we're setting off all of the alarm bells in our physiology that's like, whoa, you're doing the wrong thing. This can't be right. It feels horrible. And so we go up into our heads and we start to question that. Am I doing the right thing? Is this a boundary? Is this mean? Am I abandoning them? Am I da 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 da, right? And
Yeah.
we're alone. We're alone with all that thinking. So
Mhm.
the expectation that we have that, almost all families have, they don't get to me, till they're at the end, like last resort is somebody that's sitting in front of me. I'm never somebody's first stop, right? Because we think we can handle it, we think we can figure this out, or that we should, be able to manage all of this. And the reality is that that is such an unrealistic expectation that we put onto ourselves.
Mhm.
Um, to be able to, just rock in and set a boundary, like, that's not gonna happen, and not only that, but your loved one is gonna spaz, like, they're gonna freak out, right? And they're gonna push back. And what are we gonna do? Question everything. And they're gonna press on those, "Oh, you feel guilty about something? We're gonna press on that," and
Mhm.
that's not them, and I really wanna separate the 2. That's not who they are either. That's
Yeah.
addiction. That's one of the symptoms of addiction. And when somebody is in a craving, when somebody is, in their compulsion to use, the rational mind again is offline. It's offline for us, it's offline for them. So
Mhm.
what a storm that we're finding ourselves in. But
Yes.
we really do need to have outside support when we are trying to do anything like setting boundaries or new styles of communication or,
Mhm.
what have you. These things are not gonna feel natural.
No. When you're speaking, I think the word that came up for me is shame. So that's like, yes, because 'cause you're saying, "Go ask for help." But I think, unfortunately, there's a lot out in the world nowadays, in social media, all the things and the expectation of what is a perfect family. No family's perfect. But
Mhm.
he's kind of bringing these up, it gives him a lot of shame, or I have some we won't go too much into it because you and I have already had the conversation. Um, but I would say, like when I was younger, my dad was an alcoholic, so I don't bring that up, and like I don't even know if my mom even knows that I remember those things, but I do.
Yeah. So you're far from alone. If somebody would have told me, you know, when I was 12 that I was gonna come on a podcast and talk to people about my heroin addicted father, I would have said, there's no way, right? Because it was the biggest, deepest shame. And I thought I was so alone. I thought, there wasn't a person on the planet. I didn't tell my best friends at school. I mean, I know people knew. There
Mhm.
were, ways where it was popping out here and there, but I did everything in my power to make it look like I
Yeah,
had the perfect
same.
life. Yeah. So perfectionism still something that I battle with. And I think I started at the beginning, like it still impacts me today. A lot of people will tell you, I've dealt with this or I've dealt with that. And it just doesn't work that way, right? Like these things will pop up. It's just about being aware of how we've been impacted by this,
Yes.
understanding, oh, there's my little 12-year-old self who's embarrassed and ashamed
Mhm.
and, completely mortified that this is happening in my family.
Yep.
Also feeling disloyal for even thinking things like that or having thoughts like that. So shame is single-handedly the biggest uh, factor in terms of disconnecting people from support.
Mhm.
And we really, too, at the beginning, we don't understand what a massive issue it is. So we think, I'm going to get a handle on it. I'm going to get a hold on it. And then we won't really have to tell anyone. That's I think one of the bigger motivators for families in, how far we take it before we reach for help
Yeah.
is that, I'm gonna try just that little bit harder and we'll get a handle on this and then we won't have to tell people. And we don't want to tell people. I remember going through getting stopped at a roadblock, just a regular roadblock when I was a teenager, and
Mm.
they saw my driver's license and recognized my dad's last name and made a comment about him, and I was with a friend, and
Yeah.
I was completely horrified, horrified. Like, the police knew him.
Mhm.
So that shame it's big, it's real. The only antidote that I know to it, which is unfortunate because it only comes after we do the sharing,
Yeah.
but it's that experience or that feeling of me too. When I finally found treatment for myself,
Mhm.
I was like blown. My mind was blown when people started saying stuff that resonated so deeply with me. And
Mhm.
I realized that I was so far from alone, like the farthest thing, and that there was thousands and thousands and thousands of other people. I mean, sadly, unfortunately, but
Mhm.
to realize, how not alone I was, and not only that, but like the way that we handled it as a family, it's the same way that everyone handles it. These are natural human reactions to a crisis, to someone we love, in harm's way. So
Mhm.
we're all sort of doing these same things. Um, and it's just, when addiction is present, we have to start to understand it a little bit differently in order to actually support recovery. But all of our responses are so similar. We're so similar as human beings in the ways we want to help.
Mhm.
And that's really all enabling is. It's just misguided harm reduction.
Yeah. And addiction can come in different forms too. I don't maybe we can touch a little bit on that. I think would be helpful for anyone listening. And it's like spotting for the addictions too.
Yeah, well, there's so many different. ways, and that we can become addicted to things, and
Mhm.
really, you know, how much we use something or what the substance is or what the behavior is, because there's many behavioral addictions. None of that really matters. Like what we're looking at is when we're seeing sort of these life altering or life damaging consequences without the ability to stop, right? It's like for most of us, we might get into problematic using of anything, maybe shopping, maybe alcohol, maybe prescription drugs. We have some consequences. Maybe there was a DUI. Maybe our loved one spoke to us. Maybe our kids saw us do something crazy.
Mhm.
Or, maybe there wasn't enough money in the bank account to pay for some, we get a consequence or two maybe, and we go, okay, I see that, I'm done with that, and we adjust the behavior. So,
Mhm.
when this starts to become actual, adaptations in our brain as opposed to just abuse of a behavior or a substance, when it becomes actual addiction, where our brains have actually maladapted, that's when those braking systems aren't working. That's when those things where that's when that rationalization, I love you, I'm pleading, please stop,
Mhm.
and they can't. It's because the brain has maladjusted. It's not because they don't love us, and that's why I say addiction doesn't negotiate
Yeah.
with love, because it's actual functional parts. We just can't see that part. So all we see is these behaviors, and we um, equate it to what it means about us, or
Mhm.
what it means about their feelings about us. But I can assure you, when somebody stands in front of us and says, "I never want to do that behavior again," they're
Mhm.
not. They're sincere. They don't. They don't want to be like that. I've worked with thousands of people, and they don't want to be
Mhm.
like that. They don't want to hurt people the way that they do.
Mhm.
But it's actually part, stuff that's malfunctioning for them too. So it's we don't let people off the hook for all their behaviors because it's a condition, but we do have to understand that it requires a different lens when we're looking at it.
Yeah. When you were just saying, I was just thinking of, um, have you ever watched Through a Blue Lens?
No.
It's a documentary, and I remember this. It was a documentary that was brought to our class in like middle school, I think grade 6, and it's going down to the East Hastings and showing like Vancouver and the history behind it, and really follows, like, always stuck in my brain. And I remember there was a friend in the class just started having a seizure. Like, we were watching the documentary, and he ended up having seizures watching this documentary. So, like, it's, like, in my brain of why not to do something now, but, like, when you said with a lens, I was like, "Oh, through the blue lens." So anyone's, like, because we have young kids, or you might have young kids, or wanting to teach a lot of this. The most transformational documentary I've ever seen at a young age was Through a Blue Lens. I just thought I'd throw that out there.
Yeah, that's a fantastic resource. And like more education, so much education is needed around all of it.
Mhm.
I also want to say that a lot of our behaviors around, managing, like compulsively managing and fixing and rescuing our loved ones,
Mm.
that's addiction too. That's
Mhm.
addiction too, right? And that's the same mechanisms are working where, you know, we know that this behavior, that this thing that we want to do right now is not necessarily the healthiest thing to support overall recovery, but it calms down this part of us that's in huge fear, that's in huge grief, that's in, huge emotion. And
Mm.
we do this behavior, and it calms that for a minute. And
Mhm.
those things aren't our problem in our minds. That's our solution. It's the same thing for our loved ones. The using is not the problem for them. The using is the solution. It's calming down a huge part of their system that's going haywire, that
Mhm.
feels, you know, that feels overwhelming.
Mhm.
So sometimes as family members, we can be really disconnected from even what it is we're asking our loved ones to do, like just go to treatment, just stop doing that. Well, have we ever found ourselves engaged in a behavior that we know was not necessarily healthy or helpful,
Mhm.
even when we, before we knew it, we were just doing it
Yeah.
compulsively? We can really relate to our loved ones more than we realize as family members, and asking them, "Just go to treatment, just do the work." Well, I am definitely here to encourage that we understand what is doing the work. What does that mean? What are we
Mhm.
asking them to do? Because we need to be doing the same exact thing at the
Mhm.
same exact time, and or whether or not they go to treatment or don't go to treatment. We can do this work now. We don't have to wait. And that is really what's gets me the most excited about all of this, is that we feel so helpless. We feel, that's the number one sentiment that I get when families come to me, right? Is I'm helpless, hopeless. And there's so much that we can be doing. We're obsessed with changing the wrong person.
Mhm. Would you say, because it sounds like you're just saying prior, is that sometimes they come to you when they feel like it's too late, too like kind of lost. Would there be a way for individuals to reach out to you before that? Like, is there like they maybe see this kind of, oh, they're constantly doing X, Y, and Z, but maybe reach out to you at the forefront of just getting that extra help to move anything on both sides?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and that's the beautiful piece, is that this work doesn't require anything from anybody else. It's just simply stating to somebody, This is what I'm seeing." And that's like, again, one of the biggest things, isolation, silence, walking on eggshells. We don't want to say anything. We don't want to bring it up. We don't want to make it worse. So we don't. But,
Mhm.
part of our work is being able to stand in our own power, to reconnect with, what are my values? What are my guiding principles? When addiction is present, we deviate from who we are. We separate. Again, we're in survival, not because we want to, not because we're bad or something's wrong with us, but because our bodies are doing exactly what they're meant to be doing. But we completely separate from our values, our guiding principles. We're lying, we're covering up, we're hiding, we're minimizing, we're doing wild stuff too, right?
Mhm.
Stuff we never thought we would do. I mean, we can laugh about some of the ways that my own family tried to get my dad to stop using now.
Mhm.
Um, but of course, it wasn't always that way. We certainly, in the moment, didn't find any of it humorous at all. But we separate from who we actually are
Mhm.
in these times, um, and and we end up, really far from who we used to know ourselves to be. So part of, getting in the driver's seat is reconnecting with our values, our guiding principles, our yeses and nos. Who am I? Is this okay with me? Is it
Mhm.
okay with me that I have a person using drugs in my basement? Is that who I know myself to be? And really reconnecting in a lot of ways with our own common sense. This is not working for me.
Mhm.
And being supported to vocalize that in a way that says, "This is not okay with me. Here's what I'm feeling, and here's how I'm going to be taking steps to protect my mental, emotional, financial capacity," and really being strong in those. But we do need support.
I think sometimes if you see it, sometimes it's easier to kind of like we mentioned, there's a flight fight. Like I'm a fawner. I'm like, just gonna fawn away from this. Like kind of like there's that mechanism. If I don't see it, or like just kind of just flitter away, then all is well. But then I think you kind of start getting in that loop, right? Like you know it's happening, but then you want to make start to see it happen again. Then you really want to make the change, and it's just kind of like it starts to spiral really fast.
Yes, and it will. And that's the other piece that's a bit hard for families to really receive, is that what we're doing is we're introducing new recovery-oriented behaviors. And what that means is that we're actually, every time we practice that, we're reinforcing new neural pathways in our brain. So right now, when we're triggered in trauma, our brain automatically snaps to old behavior because why? I feel safe. I feel threatened. I do this. I feel safe. Easy.
Yeah.
What we're doing with the new recovery-oriented behavior is you're building new neural pathways. So this takes time and a ton
Mhm.
of repeated behavior. So that again is what our loved ones are hopefully doing if they've gone off to treatment, is that when they're triggered in their stuff, when they have a craving, when they have these new recovery oriented behaviors that we want to gravitate to over and over, maybe, a gazillion times a day. And they can, say even up to 2 years, you're still needing to, it might not be your first response when we're triggered in our stress or what have you. And it's the same for us as families. So at first, we have the least supports, we have, no understanding or awareness of what's going on. And so we just keep doing what makes us feel safe.
Mhm.
In the beginning, it's still going to be super hard, and you're going to want to just do what is your natural response. So we
Yeah.
need that extra support. We need to slow it way down. There's this like huge sense of urgency with addiction. And
Mhm.
some of that is by design from our loved ones, right? Like, it's a crisis, it's a crisis. Well, when we're in all of that, our whole rational thought process has gone offline. We're
Mhm.
not able to make a really healthy, grounded decision from that place.
Mhm.
Nobody. And so part of it is like noticing, whoa, I'm triggered in my trauma right now, or I can feel, right? This is all of our internal messaging system that we block it out when addiction's present, but we have to reconnect with our nervous system. And
Mhm.
so, I also understand that not everyone's body feels safe, certainly not when we've been through chronic stress and trauma. So reconnecting with that can
Yeah.
can be hard. That's our work as families, is to say, what is going on? Oh my goodness, I feel myself. What am I doing? I'm triggered. What do I need to do? Call somebody. And being able to say to, certainly there are moments in addiction where it sincerely is urgent, but they are a very small fraction of the time. Most of the time, there's room to pause. We should. So
Yes.
we need to say, you know what? I feel so anxious right now. I'm so scared. I feel totally sad. I need to take a minute, or I'm super angry. Noticing our feelings, noticing our emotional, or my fingers feel like they're on fire. Like this is your body talking to you, right? And it's saying, stop. Stop this
Mhm.
conversation. Go get yourself supported. Get yourself grounded. It's gonna, we're gonna need to reach out to people. We're gonna need to talk it through and say, I had this big reaction. Is this, how do I support in this moment? What's actually supportive as opposed to just making this feeling go away?
Mhm.
So it's a real slowing down, it's a real tuning in. And then, what I like to say is we're going to respond to addiction rather than react to it.
Mhm. I like that. I find like we are in always like a state of react mode in the world, unfortunately, just because we're constantly go, 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 go. And so it's weird when we're like, hold on, let's slow down. Let's like take a minute. Like, because people want the responses like this. So it's weird when you say like just slow the nervous system, but it's like so hard to slow the nervous system. And I know, like, doing, like, trauma with money, like, this is not the same kind of topic, but doing, like, the trauma side of it, when your nervous system is so tense and so you can't think.
Well, and we don't even realize how tense and how offline we are.
Mhm,
A lot of families will be like, I'm good. I'm fine. I'm functioning. And it's not just about functioning. It's actually about, reconnecting and thriving with our lives again. And that is also the piece, like our focus is just save this person, save this person, save this person. And unfortunately, we just don't have any control over that. Like
mhm,
none. The only control over that, we have a ton of influence that we can have when we reconnect to the self.
mhm,
And so it's like this beautiful place where, not only am I going to nurture myself, I'm going to give myself support, I'm going to relearn who I am, I'm going to, care for myself as, aggressively as I'm trying to care for this person. We want to do that over here. And then, and only then, from that space, can we actually influence recovery and treatment for anybody else. But yeah, there is a huge resistance from people. They're just like, no, can you just fix them though, and then I'll get to be okay. And that I'm okay if they're okay. That's a deep one for families where it motivates a ton of behavior, right? This idea that I only get to be okay when they're okay. So I'm just gonna like aggressively work to make them okay. And not not true.
Do you have any kind of, if anyone's just going through addiction right now, recommendations on one, like maybe any resources that you might have? I know I have your website here. I'm just going to pull it up. I have two websites, but I'll go to, oh my goodness, the True North one first. I have it rolling on the screen here, but it's True North. Oh, I can't read that when it's rolling.
TrueNorthInterventions.com. Yeah.
My brain did not want to compute it.
Yeah, so I work with families, through my work with intervention, but they are called invitational interventions. So again, this is a family focused, we're all used to the old Johnson model where you surprise and we're all going to tell you need to go to treatment. So the real key difference with what I do is that your person is invited. There's no surprise. And again, it's just letting them know we are going to move forward with recovery and health for our family. We'd love for you to be a part of that, but we're going to do it regardless. And things are going to be changing around here. And that's where we have so much power, right? And that's where we have all the power. It doesn't matter if they're ready to start or not. We're going to get started because it's not just about that one person, right? Maybe there's kids involved. Maybe there's, brothers and sisters and extended family. There's a whole other system of human beings, right, that deserve health and wellness. And we're not hostage to people's addictions. We're really not. We can support them much better when we have the support for ourselves. So that's the key difference between what I do in my work is that there's no hiding or secrets. We're just letting you know we're going to start getting well and we're going to start doing things a little bit differently. And the fascinating thing is that the way family systems will adapt to the crisis of addiction, they will also adapt to the foundation of recovery. So when we start to change, the system changes, whether or not anyone likes it. That's just how systems work. When my behavior changes, it changes the system. So we do have so much power. It's not up to somebody else whether or not our family system changes. And my dad didn't make it. He didn't make it. But my kids have a much different growing up today because my mom said, I'm going to find help anyways. Whether or not he was going to do it wasn't going to define her existence and experience. And she went, she did the work. And then when I was ready, I call it my breakdown breakthrough. I don't think we have time for that. I don't think we have time for that story today, but lots of us have experienced the old breakdown breakthrough.
Yes.
And when mine came, she knew where to send me to start my recovery journey. And that changed generations. That changes generations from what could have been, a legacy of addiction and trauma to now what will be a foundation of recovery. That, my kids are the first generation in as far back in my family history and my husband's family history where trauma in the home, we can't protect everybody from all trauma, but trauma in the home will not be a factor for them. And so that's outstanding. That's exciting.
That's amazing. And generational trauma is big for a lot of individuals to kind of things crawl through. So it's like, how do you, as somebody who wants to break that generational trauma, step into it and help and protect the next generation when they come?
Yeah, and again, it's all about the self, right? So again, when families have addiction in the home, the, quote unquote healthy parent might want me to work with their child, and that is great and can be really, helpful and necessary sometimes. But the part that we often want to skip over as parents is the part where we do the work for ourselves so that we can support our children, because
Mhm.
it's much more effective. And one family member getting well, learning about themselves, and tuning into their internal messaging system and being able to connect, have intimacy with the other members of the family. One family member is way more transformational than any professional is ever going to be.
Mhm.
So again, we really don't want to skip over. We like to give our loved ones to, professionals and say, can you fix them or help them, or and we kind of want to skip over the part, and the most powerful part is that self reflection, and that
Mhm.
how we're able to connect with others when we do some of that work to connect back with ourselves.
Yes, beautiful. And I love that you do the invitation because unfortunately, I don't know, maybe aging myself here, but the back in the day when there's a TV show called Intervention, and they
Yeah.
would just bombard the individual that, hey, you're going to do this, and literally just push them out the door to go do it.
Mhm.
So whenever I think, like, unfortunately, like that's kind of like where my brain goes to.
Oh,
For,
everybody.
oh,
Yeah.
yeah,
That was a popular show, and
was.
don't get me wrong, those have worked for people. Yeah, many people are alive today because of the old Johnson model of intervention, and there
Mhm.
are, in what I do, there are aspects we're still gonna share that same way you sit around and you share, with this person, that's I do some of that work with families as well. So it's not all bad, but what, research is really suggesting is that when the individual makes their own decision to be there,
That's
that
right.
they're much more engaged in treatment. The length of stay is often longer. The investment into the aspects of recovery afterwards
Mhm.
much greater. And when you incorporate the family, and the family is also doing their work to learn about these patterns of behavior that aren't working, and we're learning about new styles of communication, then both sides can come back together in a totally new way. And that is when we see whole family transformation and whole family wellness. That is, the stuff that gets me so excited.
Mhm. Maybe that can lead into the book. That's
Yeah.
what
So
my
it's very new. It's in its infancy, but it has been a dream and a goal of mine to sort of mix my personal story with
Mhm.
my 15 years of clinical experience, and put that into a place where you could just give it to somebody, who's struggling, and say, read this. And I want it to be super practical. I want it to be super accessible and usable, like right now. And another thing that's really important to me with this book is that I co-create it.
Mhm.
So I'm asking, if you're listening and you're going through this, or if you went through it, reach out to me and tell me what would have been helpful for you to hear. What do you need to know right now?
Mhm.
Because of course, I've worked with people for a long time, and I certainly know some of the things that are helpful for people, or some of those things that repeatedly come up for people. I want to share that, but I always want to hear from people. What's it like to go through it right now, today, in today's world? And I want to provide real answers.
I love I love that. I will, if it will let me. I had a little bit, I don't know if you noticed, but I had some technical difficulties just trying to share the screen earlier. Let's see, I'm just going to go to your new website here. So everyone, I have to multitask, everyone. Just wait for a moment if that works. Can you see that?
I can.
Okay, perfect. Anyone who's listening, you'll have to come watch us over here. I'm just sharing Sonja's new website. But in essence, you're just kind of building, maybe for not me to speak, you can speak about your website and what you're kind of building over here too.
Yeah, so I'm shifting from my direct client services, although that's still something that I do, but I'm really, highly focused on creating resources and things that families can use right now. So that's what I'm working on. That's what my new website is all about. The True North Interventions. That's where you'll find all my direct client services. And like I said, we do the interventions. I also work with families. Specifically around their own recovery when their loved ones are treatment resistant. So working with people on what we can do when our loved ones just won't go to treatment and how can we still be well in that. But yeah, so you'll find more info about my book coming up, and you will find more and more resources as I'm building. But my goal really is to provide a unified space where people can come and get real answers and real help, because that just was not available for my family when we
Yeah,
went through it, and I don't know that that's changed a whole lot now. I think we're making strides
I was
with
going to
the person with the addiction, but I don't know that the families are really as cared for as they need to be.
say, it's from what I've seen, I feel like we definitely can make some more momentum there. So I love what you're doing. And just for anyone listening, you can go onto the website and you can just subscribe to the mailing list, so then you can be up to date for when the book comes or any kind of updates or any additional resources as well. Because
Yeah, and I send out blogs all the time, just trying to put out topics that I know people want to know about, and
Mhm,
hopefully help provide people with some direction.
mhm. Yes, please, for anyone who's listening, reach out, ask for help. If you're not sure where to even go, please just reach out to Sonia and can direct you in the right location as well.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. I have resources. I have people that do this work. Um, and so I'm not always a fit for everybody. And I make sure that people get to the right hands.
Amazing. Any last minute kind of thoughts? We only have about 6 or so minutes, but any kind of last thoughts or any additional things you would like to share?
Just that, if you're in this situation now, or if you've been in this situation, you deserve support. You deserve care. And um, it's out there, it's available.
Mhm. I love that. And don't be scared to ask for help. I think that's a hard thing to do, is to ask for help. But I feel like if we can start talking, this is why I like to have the radio show. The more we can talk about things like this, or things that are not in society, quote unquote, normal, the more the barriers we break down and really step in the having more voices is really needed, and asking for help and not to have shame around it. But yeah, and we're already at time here, everyone. So with that, thank you everyone for listening to Breaking Norms, Building Dreams. A big thank you to the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, and to all the amazing listeners. Just FYI, I saw some comments in there, but I didn't want to interrupt sometimes some of the conversation that we were having, or I couldn't read half the comments. So I apologize, but thank you for tuning in. And thank you so much, Sonja, for coming on today. I'm so excited to see your book, and I know we'll keep in touch. And thank you, everyone, again. And with that, remember, your journey is unique and your worth is unquestionable.